the Russian verbs of motion are arguably one of the most difficult parts of the Russian grammar. And because in English you say I go, but in Russian you say я иду, я еду, я езжу, я хожу. And when I was learning Russian, I was like, wait, there's so many different forms of to go. Why is it so difficult? So in this video, I want to help you to teach you the main distinctions that you need to think about when saying the Russian verbs of motion, and also how I categorize them in my mind, and how I learned them, and how I make sure I say them correctly when I'm speaking. So let's get started. The first distinction that you need to make between if you want to say I'm going somewhere or you're going somewhere is that I remember when I was learning Russian in the beginning, I said to my then girlfriend at a certain point, after we bought tickets to Moscow, I said, "Я иду в Москву." And she started laughing, and I'm like, wait, why are you laughing? It's like, well, if you want to say I'm going to Moscow, and if you say я иду в Москву, then you're saying that you're going somewhere on foot to Moscow. Like I'm walking to Moscow. But if you want to say it correctly, you say я еду в Москву. You say I'm going by transport to Moscow. So that's the first distinction that you need to make. Are you going somewhere on foot? Then you use идти or a form of идти. If you're going somewhere by transport, then you say ехать. So by transport can mean like plane, train, bike, car, any motorized transport. So if you're saying идти, then you say like я иду, ты идешь, он, она идет, мы идем, вы идете, они идут. And if you're going somewhere on transport, by transport, like the plane that you can hear flying over right now, then you say я еду, ты едешь, он, она едет, мы едем, вы едете, они едут. So this is the first distinction, and this is arguably like the easier one. The second one is the one that trips up a lot of people. Like in Russian, there is a distinction that's being made if you go somewhere once, like a single trip, or if it's like a multiple trip, a trip that occurs over a period of time, or is just like, going somewhere and back. So here is how you do that. If you say, I go to the supermarket, as in I'm going on a single trip, I'm going right now to the supermarket. You say, я иду в супермаркет. But if you mean like, I often go to the supermarket, as in I regularly, you're talking about several trips, right? You go now, you go next week, you often do that. Then you say, я часто, I often, хожу в супермаркет. Я часто хожу. And хожу is from ходить. And you use this when you're going on, so when you're describing more than one trip. Okay, and so the conjugation of ходить is я хожу, ты ходишь, он, она ходит, мы ходим, вы ходите, они ходят. Now, as you might guess, you have идти and ходить, so we also have ехать and ездить. Ездить is like the multiple trip variant of the verb ехать. And here's how so if you want to say like, for example, I go to Moscow, as in I'm going right now, it's a single trip, you say я еду в Москву. But if you're saying like I often go to Moscow, you say я часто езжу в Москву. Currently it's difficult to go to Moscow, but I'm using this as an example because in the beginning I already said that I said я иду, я еду в Москву. And the conjugation of ездить is я езжу, ты ездишь, он, она ездит, мы ездим, вы ездите, они ездят. So this is the second distinction, and if you really want to dive into this, check out my course, Russian Conversations Unlocked, where I dive much deeper into all these examples, and also, I really teach you on how to say them correctly while speaking. Okay, before we dive into the third last distinction that I want to talk about today, I wanted to quickly mention that, if you're speaking, don't overemphasize this. Like I said in the beginning, if you say я иду в Москву, or you mean я еду в Москву, like everyone understands, because идти, ехать, ездить, ходить, they all still mean to go. So the meaning of what you want to say is still very clear. So if you make a mistake here, don't really worry about it. This is this thing that, is the cherry on top of the cake. If you say it correctly, if you say like, я часто хожу в супермаркет instead of я часто иду в супермаркет, then Russian native speakers will be like, wow, you really get it. You really get it. So it's good to say this correctly, but don't worry too much about it while speaking. So the third distinction that I want to talk about is whenever you want to turn something into the future tense, you turn it from imperfective to perfective. This is going to be a short one because this is like a completely different grammatical construction that should be in another video. I'll make that in the future. So if you want to say, for example, so I go to the supermarket, я иду в супермаркет. But if you want to say I will go to the supermarket, you say я пойду в супермаркет. And you can use this for all forms of идти and ехать. So for example, if you want to say я иду, я пойду, I will go. Ты идешь, ты пойдешь. Он, она идет, пойдет. Мы идем, пойдем. Вы идете, пойдете. Они идут, пойдут. The same thing goes for ехать. If you want to turn it into like we are going, мы едем, to we will go, you say мы поедем. Я еду, поеду. Ты едешь, поедешь. Он, она едет, поедет. Мы едем, поедем. Вы едете, поедете. Они едут, поедут. So you can just add по. You write po, but you say pa, since the o is unstressed and then turns into an a in Russian. It's for another video. All right, so that was it. One final thing, if you want to turn this into the past tense, all these verbs, you can also do that. And in Russian, the past tense works very easily, actually. Just take a full verb and you remove the t and the soft sign, the мягкий знак at the end, and you replace it with an l. And if it's a male, you say, for example, ехал. If it's a woman, you say она ехала. If it's plural, мы ехали. And that's it. So, они ходили, мы ездили, я ездил. So it works like that. The only exception is that with идти, it turns into я шел, она шла, мы шли. Or мы пошли. You can also add по in front of it. If you want to know more about these verbs of motion, check out my course Russian Conversations Unlocked. Спасибо вам огромное за просмотр и желаю вам хорошего дня. Пока.